Okay. Equipment check, equipment check. Trying to get the piano and the voice going. Same time. Same time. Same time. Lanthanum 57. Presiodimian 59. Do not expect. It's the name to seem so foreign. Given I know I've read it at some point. Once. Like, isn't that kind of like just like a problem? Should names be this weird and hard to remember? Or is this like an ideal situation where they just don't matter? What if they just had the math numbers? As you can see on the other wall behind me, it's a chart with the protons on one axis, number of neutrons on the other. Just every nuclide or like atom, like nucleus we've ever made or witnessed. Sitting right. Okay, unless we have any requests in the chat, I'm gonna switch over to a brief word from Boy Ram.
That the Buddha keeps pointing out is created.
This is part of the effort to go through all the tabs that I decided are worthy of keeping for some reason or the other. Either taking care of business or getting rid of it.
By the mind. That's what the basic issue of the ignorance that is the root of suffering that the Buddha keeps pointing out. The basic root of suffering is thought, the clinging of the mind to things which separate one from all of it. Now, once that separation has occurred, there.
So that may seem a bit like out there. Let's repeat that last phrase.
Of the mind to things which separate one from all of it.
So I feel like Zen simplifies a lot of things from like the Buddhist world. And one of them is that, like, instead of saying
to things which separate one from all of it.
Like when you're present with the moment and experience the inflow and outflow of things, like, and you're disengaged from the past and the future, think. And that's like how the Zen states it from people that I've been reading. Like just the act, like being present is the most important thing. And the act of doing that means you disengage from those other means of thought. And like those other means of thought involve you like associating with them. Like it's hard to not feel that your feelings and your thoughts that come up, spout up in your brain, like aren't yours, but they're more like seeds that you're kind of like interacting with. And when you're present or being mindful, aware of your surroundings, you're interacting with any of those seeds of thought or inspiration or action. Whenever they pop up, you're interacting with them, not thinking about how you should be interacting from like the perspective of like projections from like how you think other people are thinking, or any of your more meta thinking. Like that's what we call like I guess that's another like modern term, an upgrade we can do, is that instead of like if you just talk on past talk, it's more just like meta talk, like analysis of the past, or like guessing of the future, worrying, anxiety. If you're being mindful, you're just engaging with those things.
Now, once that separation has occurred, there is incredible pain. We can call it being thrown out of the Garden of Eden. We can call it original sin, whatever you want to call that. I mean, there are different metaphors within different systems. But there is incredible pain. And in some profound way, all of our actions henceforth are an attempt to return to that being, for me, under Maharaji's blanket, or in the heart of God, or in the hand, or being the one, coming back into the one. And we develop a whole set of techniques that we say make us feel good, give us a feeling for the moment of, And some of those give us that moment so intensely, and the rest of our...
Wait, okay. I was worried that logic had Yep, Logic messed some stuff. Logic. You're betrayed. Logic just keeps undoing my audio settings. I was doing some other dopamine learning earlier today, and one of the things they said was like the rate that you blink is like related to your baseline dopamine levels. So like and also like attention resets to in a certain way. I don't know the details of that yet. It's further into the book, but it resets on blinking. So basically, if you have higher dopamine levels, you have a higher like refresh rate, and I think it's just like potentially an ADHD thing, where it's just like if you're refreshing your attention all the time, yeah, you could potentially be hyper focused well on something, but like if you don't have the dopamine to stay on target throughout that activity, if you're not enjoying the process, then maybe you're screwed. Like, still working on that though.
Our life is so much pain of our separateness and so devoid of that feeling that once we find one of those things, for example, it might be a moment of sexual orgasm, it might be a moment of surfing when you transcend the dualism between you and nature, it could be when you're doing something like cooking, the way you turn into just the joy of the process. It could be any number.
Yeah, I feel like sex and cooking are both good ones. Like, some of it can be like simple activities are very easy to be mindful in. Like for me, like putting dishes away from the dishwasher. Like, I'm not trying to do something else while I'm trying to do that. I'm just trying to do that as well as fast as I can. So it can be anything that helps you be more mindful, but like find ways to make you want to be more mindful of the things that you're doing. Intrinsic motivation is the king of dopamine. There are other ways to try to get the job done, but that does it the best.
Of things. It could be any number of things. That when that occurs and it works, it reinforces the behavior, and you start to do that behavior more and more because it feels good. It takes away the pain of the separateness. And the use of drugs, the use of material possessions, the use of relationships, all of it, when you get busy and get obsessed with relationships and wanting to get closer and closer to somebody, it is trying to get to the place where you come back into that oneness. It's that yearning, and you can feel it permeate the universe of people's consciousness. So when you look at addictions from that point of view, you see that it's not like evil. It is just an attempt to get back. The problem is that most behaviors that get you back is like what Maharaji said about drugs. He said it will allow you to be in the presence of Christ, but you can only stay 2 hours. He said it would be better to become Christ than visit him. And that's what you find out with most addictive things, that they give you a short rush, but they don't allow you to remain at home. They just allow you the taste of it. And then the minute you get thrown out because you weren't wearing the wedding garment, the minute you go back to heaven but you can't stay because you didn't come in through the right way, you end up feeling like I did something wrong, I'm bad. And then that starts a reaction of mind, so that you come down, then you feel guilt, I must be bad, I should have done something else. Why didn't I do the practices that would have allowed me to stay there rather than the thing that's short term? Because you see your predicament. What happens is that the opportunity for the immediate gratification, it's like what's called in the psychology, the choice of the little candy bar now or the big candy bar later. And with little children, they'll always grab for the little candy bar now because they want what they can get now. They don't have any delay of gratification. And spiritual practices compared to having sex or compared to taking Coke or something is more like delayed gratification versus immediate gratification. So when you start to stand back and see your predicament and see what you're doing, there is a way from a spiritual perspective in which you begin with that slight bit of awareness to extricate yourself from the chain of reactivity that we're talking about. The chain of reactivity that goes from I'm feeling this hunger, and then I'll go for the gratification, and then and then the coming down, and then oh shit, and then I should have done it the other way, and then I'm bad, and there's a whole chain of thoughts that go on. Every one of those is just keeping the whole process going. And as you develop the spaciousness, you start to look at where you can intervene in the process of the sequence that goes on. As the awareness gets deeper, you intervene at different places in the sequence. For example, the yearning, the hunger starts. And like for me, for example, I've had strong addictions to food. So that when I am feeling unloved, I'll eat and I'll get fat. It's a pattern. And then I'll hate myself, loathing because of my body and so on. And I'll go through it. Now I understand the psychodynamics of that at one level, but let's take it from this point of view of the mind for a moment. The first place I began to intervene was when Manindra, my meditation teacher, said, Ram Dass, don't you see that it's just old karma running off? And I began to break in at the point that after I had eaten too much to reduce my anxiety because my mother fed me food when I was upset, and I learned that pattern and all that stuff, I start to, instead of going into I'm no good and revulsion and all the sequence, I break the chain at that point, and then I just go back into my spiritual practices. Okay? Instead of carrying out that whole sequence, I shortcut there. As the witness gets stronger, you start to go back in the chain further and further until as the separateness is starting to come and the feeling of hunger, and as you're about to eat, you start to notice the fact that you're about to do that, and your mind anticipates the whole sequence, and you, in a sense, begin to see the emptiness of the form you're about to take. Now, if you try to stop it too soon using your mind to stop it, there's a residual backlash from it. So, I mean, I hope I'm not condensing. I've
been dealing with this problem a lot lately. I feel like he's describing it very, very well. Like picking out food every single day for like several meals every goddamn day. So much. because like variety is spice of life and everything. But I'm supposed to be like on my Buddha game and like trying to have less attachment to my food. So like, it's the hard trudging. I forget who I'm quoting, but I think it's like, sudden awakening, like slow. No, it's a sudden enlightenment, slow awakening, maybe. Either way, that's the effect of like you might have a sudden like insight that gets you going on like your like path in the correct direction. But it's actually walking the path, even if you can see it. That like you still gotta do. Where all the wisdom lies to be found.
I'm trying to give a lot of teaching very fast. I mean, as I understand it, as I've worked with it, that one develops a lot of patience and a lot of gentleness with oneself. And generally, when people come to me with addictions, I'm inclined to say, start doing spiritual practices. Start doing the studies that will allow you to see yourself in a new way, that will allow you to understand what that hunger is you're feeding in a new way, to just get a little different perspective on it. Don't worry about the addiction. It will fall away when it will fall away. And when you do it again, just notice it. And the line I always used, how poignant I am. How poignant the human condition. You know, I'm so gentle with myself. And what I have watched is the patterns of my obsessions and addictions have changed over time. There's no doubt about that. And yet I didn't deal with them directly head on for the most part. Because what you see is, and this is something that I'm sure I create a lot of waves in many people, including people that I love very dearly, that I'm close to. I see that a lot of the programs to deal with addiction.
So there's one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately. I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh. I think I got that right. He was talking about how if you find yourself like meditating, you end up like not needing to breathe as deeply. So then you find yourself like maybe sometimes breathing like too shallowly. So you're like, oh, like I need to take more breath. So the natural reflex is to like take a really big breath and you kind of like reset your breath. But what you should do instead is just notice that it's a little off and then like make smaller adjustments to get to where you want to be at or where you should be at, and don't like resettle yourself in that way. Try to be like more gentle and not try to be like, oh, time for some action, you know, like the direct interpretation is true, but like I like this a lot more like as a metaphor for how to deal with other things. Like your brain will have its default message that it wants to send that you're trying to correct, and it's going to be louder to you at that moment than you want it to be. You know it's coming. So then you kind of just look for little hooks that your brain gives you, little outs that it'll try to provide. You just gotta weasel your way out of doing the thing that your brain is trying to command you to. And the more successfully you weasel out, then that just makes it like the new route. And so you don't have to do any no weaseling no more after. That's why a lot of the brain things are just so kind of troll in some ways. It's like, yeah, the first step is like the hardest, and that like is such like a, you know, frequently said thing, but and just kind of sucks, but just so true. Actually, the hardest part would be continuing on in ignorance, actually, I believe. That's another like Buddhism thing. It's like that if you know, like, understand like what you're eating or consuming, whatever. If you're fish out in the sea and it's some bait on a hook, like that bait might taste good and be delicious in the short term, you know that. But like, if it's eventually gonna pull you in, like, you have a very different response to eating that bait. And obviously that's a very binary outcome of like life or death for that fish in that moment. But like, that's what's more insidious, but the other trade-offs that we make is that they're a little bit of life and death, but on, a scale that we can't like perceive.
Addiction end up creating a new addiction to being not addicted that is as bad as the addiction itself. That, I mean, when you meet somebody that says, I haven't smoked in 3 years, 2 months, 10 days, and 4 hours, you realize that their mind is as stuck as their mind was stuck in smoking. Maybe they won't die of cancer, they'll probably die of uptightness. I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but in general, I'm saying that dealing with things that are, which you're caught in, the minute you start to...
I think I'll add one thing to this, and I think we'll be done for the night.
But in general, I'm saying that as their mind was stuck in smoking. Maybe they won't die of cancer, they'll probably die of uptightness.
Celebrate incremental progress. That's very similar to celebrating process. Both those things, that's where like basically the key to happiness seems to lie from a lot of these things. That understanding your brain circuits, that seems pretty important. But like, I guess I want to come back to this, celebrate the small wins, especially for the important things. The smaller, like, more important it is, like, the smaller your increment should be that you're celebrating at the beginning, because you're just giving yourself a lot in the long term, and you're doing the hardest part. So, like, keep that in mind. Just keep, like, as you go have your ups and downs, just make sure you're still, whenever you have a certain, like, amount of energy, still pushing forward on those things. Like, don't waste opportunities to push forward on the energy, but still celebrate progress. And nothing is more about, like, don't think any other, like, no, I don't want to say generalities, but doing things daily does magic. Maybe there's other sources of magic, but this is a true source of magic. That is all. Good night. Oh dear, you already sit on my seat. You have anything to say to the people, Dio? Nothing, Dio? Oh, there it goes.